Imagine you're sitting in an elementary school classroom. The teacher walks to the front. She looks around the room. One kid is funny. One kid is athletic. One kid never stops talking. And then she smiles at the quiet kid in the front row. This one. This one is going to do something incredible someday. Everyone smiles. Your parents smile. Your grandparents smile. You smile. It feels like the greatest compliment a child could ever receive. But what if I told you those words have quietly become one of the heaviest burdens millions of adults still carry today? Not because being smart is a problem, because being the smart one slowly becomes an identity. And identities are much harder to escape than labels. Here's something that psychologists have been trying to understand for decades. Why do so many gifted children grow into adults who constantly feel like they're falling behind? Think about the people you know, the straight A student, the valedictorian, the gifted kid, the one everyone assumed would become wildly successful. Some did become successful: doctors, lawyers, engineers, scientists, business owners, professors, people everyone admires. And yet, late at night, many of them lie awake thinking, I should be doing more. I'm wasting my potential. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. How can someone who objectively succeeded feel like they've objectively failed? The answer begins much earlier than most people think. Long before careers, long before college, long before adulthood. It begins with a misunderstanding your brain made before you were even old enough to know what psychology was. Imagine you're 8 years old. You walk through the front door carrying a report card. Straight A's. Your parents hug you. Your teacher writes, outstanding work. Your grandparents tell all their friends how proud they are. The report card ends up on the refrigerator. For a few days, you're the center of attention. Then the next report card comes. Maybe it's mostly A's, with one B. Nobody yells, nobody punishes you, but something changes. The excitement isn't quite the same. Children are incredible pattern recognition machines. Your brain quietly notices something. People seem happiest with me when I achieve. Nobody has to say, we'll only love you if you succeed. That's rarely how it happens. The lesson is much quieter, which is exactly why it's so powerful. Because your brain isn't listening to speeches, it's watching patterns. And eventually, it writes an invisible rule. Achievement creates acceptance. Not always, not perfectly, but often enough. That tiny sentence becomes the operating system running silently in the background of your life. Then comes a compliment almost every gifted child hears. You're so smart? It sounds harmless. In fact, it sounds wonderful. But psychologists discovered something fascinating. Children praised primarily for intelligence often become more afraid of failure than children praised for effort. That seems backwards. Shouldn't believing you're smart make you more confident? Actually, it often does the opposite. Because intelligence slowly stops being something you have. It becomes who you are. And once intelligence becomes identity, failure becomes terrifying. Imagine two children taking the same math test. The first child thinks, I'm learning. The second thinks, I'm the smart kid. Now they both fail. The first child loses a test. The second child loses part of their identity. That's a completely different kind of pain. And your brain will do almost anything to avoid feeling it again. Which brings us to one of the strangest paradoxes in psychology. Have you ever noticed how many incredibly intelligent people procrastinate? That shouldn't make sense. If you're smart, shouldn't everything be easier? Shouldn't you start early, stay organized, finish ahead of schedule? Instead, many gifted people wait until the very last minute. Not because they don't care, because they care too much. Psychologists call this self-handicapping. Imagine you have a presentation next Friday. You could spend all week preparing. Instead, you start Thursday night. Why? Because now, if it goes badly, like your brain has an excuse. I would have done better if I'd had more time. That excuse protects something much more valuable than your grade. It protects your identity. Because discovering you aren't prepared hurts much less than discovering you might not actually be as capable as everyone believed. Suddenly, procrastination doesn't look like laziness anymore. It looks like self-defense. And here's the frightening part. Most people never realize they're doing it. But childhood eventually ends, and adulthood introduces a completely different problem. For the first 20 years of your life, being exceptional gets rewarded. Teachers notice, parents celebrate, people clap. Then one day, you enter the real world, and something quietly changes. Being exceptional is no longer impressive. It's expected. Your boss doesn't congratulate you for doing your job well. Your clients expect excellence. Your coworkers assume competence. The thing that once made you special becomes the minimum requirement. And that's the moment many gifted people begin asking a question they've never had to ask before. If being smart isn't enough anymore, then who am I? And that question changes everything. Here's the strange thing. Most gifted children don't stop succeeding. They simply stop feeling successful. And almost nobody notices. Because from the outside, their life looks impressive. Good career, good salary. People ask them for advice. Parents are proud. Friends assume they have everything figured out. But inside, something has quietly broken. Not their ambition, their relationship with ambition. Think about your first real success. Maybe it was getting into college, landing your first job, getting promoted, buying your first home. Remember how impossible it once felt? Now ask yourself something. How often do you think about that achievement today? Probably almost never. Why? Because your brain has a strange habit. The moment you achieve something, it quietly moves it from the category of dream into the category of normal. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. Your brain constantly updates what normal feels like. The first promotion changes your life. The second feels expected. The first six-figure salary feels unbelievable. A few years later, but it feels average. The finish line doesn't disappear. It moves. Again and again and again. One day you realize something terrifying. You're no longer chasing your dreams. You're chasing your own expectations. Then the internet quietly changes the rules. Imagine being the smartest kid in your school. In 1985, you compared yourself to maybe a few classmates, maybe someone in the next town. That was it. Today, before you've even finished your morning coffee, you've already compared yourself to a billionaire founder, an Olympic athlete, a 23-year-old AI entrepreneur, a best-selling author, someone your age traveling the world, and another person claiming they retired before 30. Your brain doesn't understand algorithms. It doesn't know these are the most extraordinary lives from billions of people. It simply reaches one conclusion. I'm behind. The cruel irony? Almost every one of those people that has had the exact same thought. And that's when potential quietly becomes a prison. Have you noticed something about the word potential? It's always about the future, never the present. No one says you fulfilled your potential. They say you have so much potential. Even after you've succeeded, potential is a finish line that keeps moving. You can never actually arrive. Because the moment you do, people invent a bigger version of you. Imagine climbing a mountain only to discover everyone is pointing to an even taller one. After a while, you stop celebrating how high you've climbed. You only notice how much higher you're expected to go. That's why so many high achievers struggle to rest. Here's a simple experiment. Take 3 days off. Turn off your email. Close your laptop. Don't build anything. Don't optimize anything. Don't learn another skill. Just exist. If that idea makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself why. Most people assume they're addicted to productivity. Often, they're addicted to permission. Permission to feel proud. Permission to relax. Permission to believe they've done enough. The problem is, achievement gives that permission, only temporarily. By Monday morning, your brain wants more evidence, more proof, another accomplishment, another gold star, another reason to believe, maybe now I'm enough. This is why some of the most accomplished people in the world never actually enjoy winning. Have you ever watched an Olympic athlete immediately talk about the next Olympics? Or an entrepreneur sell a company, only to start another one a month later? Or a straight A student panic over getting a 96? From the outside, it looks like ambition. Sometimes it's fear. Because if your identity depends on achievement, standing still feels dangerous. Not working feels dangerous. Being average feels dangerous. Success stops feeling exciting. It starts feeling like survival. But here's the part that changed how psychologists think about high achievement. Not everyone who was the smart kid ends up trapped. Some people escape, not because they become less ambitious, but because they eventually separate two things that most of us accidentally combine: what we do and who we are. Those sound similar. They're not. Your achievements describe your life. They do not define your value. Your resume can tell people where you've worked. It cannot tell them your worth. Your salary can measure what the market pays for your skills. It cannot measure you. The moment you ask your career to answer the question, am I enough? You've given it a job it can never finish. Because there will always be another promotion, another comparison, another younger genius, another person who seems further ahead. The question never gets answered. It only gets asked louder. Maybe that's why so many brilliant people feel exhausted. Not because they're weak, not because they lack discipline, but because they've spent years trying to earn something that was never supposed to be earned. Their own permission to believe they're enough. Perhaps that's the hidden cost of being the smart one. The world teaches gifted children how to achieve. It teaches them how to compete, how to perform, how to win. But almost nobody teaches them the one lesson that matters most: that your value doesn't begin the day you accomplish something extraordinary. It existed long before your first report card, long before your first promotion, long before anyone called you gifted. And maybe that's the greatest irony of all. The children everyone believed would change the world often spend decades believing they aren't enough, when the truth is, they've been enough from the very beginning. If this story felt uncomfortably familiar, you're not alone. Every week we explore the hidden psychology behind the thoughts, behaviors, and patterns that quietly shape our lives. If you enjoy these deep dives, subscribe. You might not just understand other people a little better. You might finally understand yourself.